Before cryptocurrency, before the stock market, before houses made of bad loans, there was a flower. A single tulip bulb in 1630s Holland was worth more than a house, a carriage, and a lifetime of wages combined. This is the story of how an entire country lost its mind together, and why every financial panic since has followed the exact same script. Settle in, we are going to a pub in Amsterdam. Chapter 1. The Tulip Arrives. The tulip was not Dutch, it was Turkish. It arrived in Holland in the late 1500s. Stuffed in the luggage of a botanist who had been exploring the gardens of the Ottoman Empire. He thought it was a pretty flower and brought a few bulbs home as souvenirs from his travels. He had absolutely no idea what he was starting. The first tulips in Dutch soil were treated like any other exotic plant, interesting but not important. The wealthy planted them in their gardens to show their friends that they were worldly people with connections to faraway places. Nobody paid serious money for them. They were just flowers. A decade passed, quietly. A few bulbs were traded between rich collectors, but nothing that would make headlines. But something about the tulip was different from every other flower in Europe. It bloomed early, in April, when the rest of the garden was still grey and dead from winter. Its colors were vivid in a way that felt almost artificial, like a painting that had come to life. And then the virus hit. Not a bad virus, a good virus. A mosaic virus that spread through the bulbs and turned ordinary petals into something nobody had ever seen before. Stripes of white and red shooting through the color, flames of yellow licking through purple, feathers of pink fading into cream. The collectors went quiet when they saw it. They felt something shift in the air, something they could not name, and they started asking a very dangerous question. How much would you pay for something that absolutely nobody else has? Chapter 2. The rich guys get bored. In the 1620s, Amsterdam was the richest city in the entire world. The Dutch East India Company was printing money faster than anyone could count. Every ship that came back from Asia was stuffed with pepper, nutmeg, silk, and porcelain, goods that sold for 10 times what they cost. The merchants who owned those ships had more cash than they knew what to do with. They had big houses on the finest canals. They had paintings by the most famous artists on their walls. They had carriages, horses, servants, and everything money could buy at the time. But they were bored. There was nothing left to show off that their rivals did not already own. So they started collecting tulips. This was not a financial decision at all. It was pure social climbing, a competition between rich men who had run out of things to compete over. A man with a rare tulip in his garden could invite his rivals over for a drink and casually mention the price he had paid. The more ridiculous the price, the more status it gave him in their eyes. The first serious sale happened in 1623. A single bulb of a rare variety called Semper Augustus sold for 1,000 guilders. A skilled craftsman earned about 250 guilders a year. So one bulb was worth 4 years of non-stop labor. The buyer did not plant it in the ground. He displayed it in a special vase in his front window, so everyone walking past could see that he owned something they could never afford. His neighbors hated him for it, but they also started looking at their own gardens differently. That purple flower in the corner of the yard, maybe it was worth something after all. Chapter 3. The Broken Bulb. The virus that made tulips so beautiful was a complete mystery to 17th century botanists. They could see the effect clearly but had no idea what caused it. A solid red tulip would unexpectedly produce a new bulb that bloomed with white flames shooting through the petals. They called these broken bulbs and had no clue why they happened. They thought the soil of certain gardens was magical. They thought the bulbs were mutating on purpose, choosing their own patterns. They tried everything to reproduce the effect. They planted bulbs next to each other. They tried different types of soil. They watered with different water. They even prayed to God for a broken bulb to appear in their garden. Nothing worked. The broken pattern was completely random and completely unpredictable. This made it incredibly valuable. A broken bulb was a lottery ticket that had already won the grand prize. You could not manufacture one in 1,000 tries. You could not predict which bulb would break next season. You could only find one by sheer luck and then hold on to it with both hands. The most famous broken variety was the Semper Augustus. Pure white petals with vivid red flames shooting up from the base, like someone had dipped the flower in fresh blood and let it spread upwards. A single Semper Augustus bulb became the most expensive tulip in Dutch history. At its peak, one bulb traded for 5,500 gulden. That was enough money to buy a grand house in the best part of Amsterdam, a carriage, and a team of horses. Chapter 4. The First Whispers. By 1634, even people with no interest in flowers had heard about tulip money. The story spread through the port districts and the market squares like a fever that could not be shaken. A weaver in Haarlem bought a bulb for 50 guilders and sold it a month later for 200. A tavern keeper in Utrecht got lucky with a broken bulb and paid off his entire mortgage in a single afternoon. Every story had the same shape: ordinary person, small investment, huge return, happy ending. The thought loop began quietly in the back of people's minds, repeating over and over, "If that guy can do it, why not me?" The first wave of new buyers was made up of butchers, bakers, shoemakers, maids, and fishermen. People who had never invested in anything in their entire lives. They did not care about tulips as flowers. They did not know the names of the varieties or the colors of the petals. They cared about one thing only: the numbers on the price list going up. They bought bulbs the way people today buy stocks they have never researched, because the only thing that matters during a bubble is that the price keeps climbing. The rich collectors noticed the new money pouring into the market. They started selling their best bulbs to the newcomers at higher and higher prices. This was not a conspiracy. It was simply human nature. When you own something that is climbing in price, you start believing you are smarter than everyone else. And when new people line up to buy from you, you feel like an absolute genius. Chapter 5. The pub that started a frenzy. Tulip trading moved from the quiet gardens to the loud taverns. In cities across Holland, ordinary citizens started gathering in smoky pubs to trade bulbs the same way we trade stocks today. There was no paperwork. There was no official exchange building. There was just a wooden table, a mug of beer, and a handshake. A man would pull a bulb out of a cloth sack, describe its variety and pattern, and people would start bidding against each other right there on the spot. The pub became a social pressure cooker that nobody could escape. You could not sit there quietly with your drink while everyone around you was making money out of thin air. The silence felt like personal failure. The psychology was identical to a modern casino. The noise of the crowd, the examples of winners holding up their money, the steady erosion of your self-control with every drink you ordered. There were pub contests to see who could name the most tulip varieties from memory. There were drinking games tied directly to bulb prices. There were fights between buyers who thought they had been cheated, but the disputes were always settled the same way, with more trading and more drinking. The Dutch government watched this happen and did absolutely nothing to intervene. Why would they interfere with something that was making everyone happy? The trade was generating tax revenue for the cities. The tavern owners loved the crowds and the money they spent on beer. The city councils loved the extra tax money flowing into their budgets. Nobody saw the cliff because everybody was staring at the sky with their mouths open. Chapter 6. The Fisherman's Mistake. In the spring of 1636, a sailor working for a wealthy merchant was given a simple task: deliver a load of goods to a ship waiting in the harbor. Nothing complicated at all. The merchant left his office for a moment to sign some papers in the back room. The sailor noticed something sitting on the counter. A bulb. It looked exactly like an onion. Brown papery skin, same size and shape. He was hungry from the morning's work. He picked it up and ate it in 3 bites without thinking twice. That bulb was a rare Semper Augustus, worth roughly 3,000 guilders, more money than that sailor would earn in his entire working life. The merchant returned to his office, saw the empty wrapper on the counter, and understood immediately what had happened. His face went completely white. He sent men running to the harbor to stop the sailor before he left. They found him sitting on the deck of the ship, chewing contentedly, completely unaware that he had just eaten a house. He was arrested on the spot and spent months in prison. The story spread across Holland like wildfire. It was told in every pub, every market, and every dinner table in the country. A man ate a fortune and did not even notice the taste. The story should have made people stop and think about what they were actually buying. If a single bulb can be eaten by accident, what are we really trading here? But the human mind does not work that way during a bubble. The story made people want tulips more, not less. It proved that tulips were so valuable that even a mistake cost a lifetime of wages. Chapter 7. The Peak. By the winter of 1636, the tulip market had reached a fever that history had never recorded before. A single bulb of the Admiral van der Eyck variety sold for 4,400 guilders. The buyer also threw in a carriage and a pair of grey horses as a bonus. A viceroy tulip was traded for goods that included 2 loads of wheat, for loads of rye, for oxen, 8 pigs, a dozen sheep, 2 hogsheads of wine, 4 barrels of beer, 2 barrels of butter, 1,000 pounds of cheese, a bed, a suit of clothes, and a silver drinking cup. The list was recorded by a historian who could not believe what he was writing down on the page. The entire country had stopped producing anything real. Weavers stopped weaving cloth. Brewers stopped brewing beer. Bakers stopped baking bread. Why would anyone work for a whole month when you could make a year's wages in a single afternoon by flipping a bulb from one buyer to the next? The chapter breathes here a quiet moment before the storm breaks, because the peak of any bubble has a strange stillness to it. Everyone is making money. Everyone is genuinely happy. Nobody is arguing about prices anymore. The air in the taverns feels perfect and warm. But it is the perfect stillness of a room that is about to collapse under its own impossible weight. The people who made the most money at the very peak were the ones who understood one dark truth. The game only ends when the last fool finally buys in. Chapter 8. The First Doubt. In early February of 1637, a man in Harlem showed up to a scheduled bulb auction with his tulips ready to sell. He had signed a contract to sell them at a specific price. The buyer did not arrive. The seller waited 1 hour, then 2 hours, nothing. This had never happened before in the history of the Dutch tulip trade. Every single contract had been honored because every single contract had made both parties money. But this buyer had woken up that morning with a cold, heavy feeling in his stomach. He had done the math while lying in bed in the dark. He had looked at what he had promised to pay for some bulbs and realized that nobody on earth would ever pay that much for a flower. So he simply stayed home and refused to come out. The seller panicked immediately. He started calling every other buyer he knew in the city. One by one, they made excuses for why they could not buy today. Not rude refusals, just tired voices saying they would check back later in the week. The rumor did not explode like a bomb going off. It leaked like a slow crack forming in a dam, a quiet trickle of doubt that started in Harlem and spread through the network of pub traders over the next few days. Nobody said the word crash out loud, but everyone started watching each other more carefully. The social anxiety in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every handshake felt heavier. Every price quoted felt like a test. Chapter 9. The Panic. A single major tulip holder decided to sell his entire collection at once, not because he needed the cash to pay bills, because he had seen something in the faces of the buyers that told him the party was finished forever. When he sold, the entire market trembled like a frightened animal. When the next man sold, the market cracked down the middle. By the end of that week, nobody in Holland was buying tulips at any price at all. The collapse was instantaneous, like a door slamming shut in every single face at exactly the same moment. A bulb that had been worth 5,000 guilders on Monday morning was worth absolutely nothing by Tuesday afternoon. Not 4,000 guilders, not 1,000 guilders, not a single guilder. Zero, because there were zero buyers left to sell to. The entire market was nothing but a chain of people hoping to sell to the next person in line, and when that chain finally broke, the value of everything disappeared into thin air. Contracts worth millions of guilders evaporated within hours. People who had borrowed heavily to buy bulbs now owed debts they could never repay in a lifetime. The panic spread through every Dutch city within days. The pubs that had been packed with shouting, celebrating traders were now completely empty and silent. That silence was louder than the trading had ever been. The same men who had been celebrating 2 weeks earlier were now hiding in their houses, afraid to answer the door. And the worst part was how quiet it all was. Chapter 10. The Aftermath. The Dutch government did not know what to do. They had never seen a financial collapse before in their entire history. There was no playbook for this kind of disaster, nothing in the law books that covered this situation. Cities held emergency meetings with panicked citizens demanding answers. Committees were formed to investigate what had gone wrong. Lawyers argued for months about who owed what to whom and whether the contracts were even valid in the first place. The courts eventually made a decision that shaped the entire outcome of the crisis. Tulip contracts were officially ruled as gambling debts and would not be enforced by the law. This was the only thing that saved the Dutch economy from total destruction. If every signed contract had been enforced by the courts, half the country would have been dragged into bankruptcy overnight. Families would have lost their homes. Entire businesses would have collapsed. Instead, the government essentially said that nobody had to pay for the bulbs they had promised to buy at those insane prices. The rich merchants who had made the most money at the peak were absolutely furious at this decision. The poor weavers who had lost their life savings were deeply relieved that they would not be forced to pay. Everyone was angry at someone else for what had happened, but the anger was hollow and quiet inside each person's chest. There was nobody to truly blame except themselves. The tulip had done nothing wrong. It had just sat quietly in the ground and bloomed when spring arrived, just like it always did. The collective delusion had come entirely from within their own minds. Chapter 11. The Scapegoat. Everyone in Holland needed someone to blame for the disaster that had destroyed their savings and their dreams. The poor blamed the rich for tricking them with false promises of easy money. The rich blamed the poor for being too greedy and stupid to get involved in something they did not understand. The tavern owners blamed the government for not stepping in earlier to stop the insanity. The government blamed the tavern owners for encouraging reckless gambling in their establishments night after night. Foreigners blamed the Dutch for being naturally greedy people who got what they deserved. The Dutch blamed the foreigners for corrupting their innocent tulip trade with foreign money. Everyone was desperately searching for a single villain to point their finger at, but the truth was far more uncomfortable than any villain could ever be. There was no single person responsible for what happened. The bubble was created by thousands of ordinary, decent people, all making the exact same mistake at the exact same time. Nobody lied to anyone else. Nobody cheated anyone with a clever scam. Everybody in Holland had believed the same beautiful lie together, and they believed it completely with all their hearts. The price of a tulip is whatever the next person will pay for it. That one simple sentence explains every financial bubble in human history. The scapegoat was a comfort that nobody truly believed deep down in their quietest moments by themselves at night, and that was the hardest part to accept. They had done this to themselves with their own hands and their own choices, and if they were honest, they knew they would probably do it all over again if they ever got the chance. Chapter 12. What we learned. The Dutch economy survived the tulip collapse because it was built on real things that produced real value. Trade routes, ships, spices, and solid banking. The Tulip Mania was only a small piece of a much larger machine, and the machine kept running despite the damage it suffered. But the story of what happened in those years never died. It became the template for every financial bubble that has followed in history. The South Sea Company in England, the Mississippi Company in France, the stock market crash of 1929, the dot-com bubble of the 1990s, the housing bubble of 2008, the same exact pattern every single time without fail. A shiny new asset appears that nobody fully understands. Early investors make real money and tell everyone about it. The story of their success spreads like a virus through the population. More and more people pile into the market. The price climbs far beyond any reasonable value. The peak arrives with everyone celebrating. The first doubt creeps in quietly. The panic explodes like a bomb. The collapse happens fast and brutal. The blame game begins and everyone points fingers. And then, a few years later, someone writes a smart book about it and everyone reading it swears they would never be that stupid. Here is the strange detail to end on. Tulips are still grown in Holland by the millions every single year. Tourists visit the famous flower fields every spring. They take photographs for their social media. They buy bulbs for a few euros at the gift shop on their way out. They have no idea they are standing on the exact ground where an entire country once lost its mind over a flower. And that is the real lesson. Bubbles are not caused by evil people or stupid people. They are caused by perfectly normal people acting completely naturally in an environment where the normal rules have suddenly stopped working.